On the morning of January 20th, 2015, Venezuelan police received a 911 report at around 5:30 a.m. about a tragic event at the Camino Real building, located in Urbanización Andrés Bello in Maracay, Aragua State. This event involved two musicians, the Venezuelan rapper CANSERBERO and his friend Carlos Molnar, who was bass player of a reggae group called Sayant. The report was made by the bass player's wife, Natalia Améstica, who at the time realized what had happened and stated that CANSERBERO had killed her husband in a psychotic act and then threw himself from the 10th floor. Once the police arrived at the building, they found the rapper's body in a dorsal decubitus position, surrounded by a puddle of blood, relatively far from the building, with a fractured jaw, some teeth missing, and his pants at ankle level. His body remained there until 10:30 in the morning. On the other hand, the body of Carlos Molnar was found in his apartment in the living room of the building, with multiple stab wounds, all of them in the back. According to the first statements of the victim's wife, CANSERBERO spent the night in their apartment as they had celebrated the birthday of one of their daughters. In the early morning, the rapper knocked on the door of the master bedroom in desperation, where the couple was sleeping. When Carlos opened the door, they began to argue, and she noticed that he was not feeling well. He told her to lock herself in the room while he calmed his friend down. Suddenly, the victimizer pulled out a knife and, in a fit of rage, killed her husband with several stab wounds. Seeing what he had done, he threw himself out of the kitchen window minutes later. After some silence, Natalia came out and observed the scene. Her husband was lying on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood, and she could see that he had 12 stab wounds. It was then that she called the emergency number. Once she peeked out of the apartment, a neighbor on the 3rd floor told her that he had heard how he had thrown himself. According to this neighbor's testimony, he realized what had happened because he heard how her body hit the walls of the building and finally fell. After hearing Natalia Amestica's statement, the media immediately released the news, where it was said that the rapper CANSERBERO, in a psychotic attack, had murdered his best friend Carlos Molnar to finally take his own life by jumping from a building. That same day, around 1:30 in the afternoon, the brother of Natalia, the bassist's wife, went public to talk to the media about the alleged psychological illnesses, such as schizophrenia, that the rapper had had for some time. According to her statements, the couple had offered accommodation to CANSERBERO since he was going through a strong depression at the time and refused to receive medical help. Around 5 a.m., the young man knocked on the door of the room where Carlos and his wife Natalia were staying. When the bassist opened the door, CANSERBERO lunged at him with a knife, and they struggled until they reached the living room. At that moment, he received several stab wounds. Meanwhile, Natalia searched the internet to find out what the main causes of the artist's behavior were. In a matter of seconds, she noticed the sound of some glass breaking. When she left the apartment, a neighbor downstairs told her that CANSERBERO had jumped out of the kitchen window. It was at that moment that Natalia called 911 to report the incident. Investigations in this case began immediately. Once the bodies were taken to the Caña de Azúcar morgue in Maracay for necropsy, the police noticed the presence of security cameras in the building. They asked the owner of the complex to provide the recordings of that early morning, but mysteriously the cameras were not recording that day as they were turned off. The owner of the complex turned out to be Natalia Amestica's father. When the police entered the apartment, they observed the window through which the young man had apparently thrown himself. They noticed that it was made of glass and that all the glass was in place, with no trace of blood. In addition, Carlos's body was on the floor in the ventral decubitus position with 12 stab wounds on his back, which did not fit with the statements of Natalia and her brother, who assured that he was in a psychotic state. It was also strange that all of the bassist's wounds were on his back, since if CANSERBERO attacked him when he opened the door, he should have had fight wounds on his hands and forearms, which he did not have. The experts determined that CANSERBERO fell face up, which was strange, since if he had been thrown from the window, he would have fallen in a straight line, as usually happens in falls from heights. According to reports, he fell away from the site, which could indicate that he was carried and thrown from heights. In addition, the rapper's body showed no blood traces, as would be expected if he had stabbed someone, and there was no blood from Carlos Molnar. 2 days after the event, Carlos's wife went to live in Chile without giving her statement to an authority. It was later revealed that the forensic doctor who performed the autopsy on the rapper's body was an acquaintance of hers. After the intervention of the authorities, it was concluded that Canserbero, who suffered from schizophrenia, had murdered his friend Carlos Molnar in a psychotic state and then threw himself out of the window to take his own life. However, family members were unsure of this version, as they claimed that the young man had no history of schizophrenia and had not behaved strangely. Months later, Canserbero's sisters went to the authorities together with the ombudsman, Tarek William Saab, to demand that the case be reopened, as there were many inconsistencies in the case. Once the case was reopened, Natalia was notified to testify, since she had been the only eyewitness at the time of the event. When questioned about the money that the rapper had collected from the tour, she assured that she did not know what they were talking about, since the financial matters were arranged by Carlos and Canserbero. Regarding why her children were not at the place at the time of the events, she assured that after the party her children wanted to visit their grandparents, and after some time it was late, so the grandparents told her that the best thing was for them to stay at home. So she returned with Carlos to the apartment, since Canserbero was waiting for them. One of the hypotheses that arose later was a crime of passion, since it was speculated that the reason Tyron was found with his pants around his ankles was because Carlos found his wife Natalia with Canserbero in the middle of the act. It is said that Natalia summoned the rapper to her apartment to have sex, since Carlos was playing at a party and apparently they both had sex when he was not there. That is, they were lovers. What Natalia never imagined was that her husband would arrive just when they were having sex. When she saw him, full of anger, she threw him out of the window. Subsequently, Carlos rushed at her, and she, in self-defense, stabbed him several times, since her husband wanted to kill her. The problem with this is that it cannot be explained why there is no broken glass in the apartment, nor can it be explained why, if it was in self-defense, all the wounds were made in the back. Another version indicates that when they were discovered by Carlos, he lunged at Canserbero. They began to struggle, and in an oversight, the rapper attacked him until he killed him. When he saw what he had done, he felt remorse and threw himself out of the window. Again, it cannot be explained why, if Canserbero attacked his friend, he had no blood from his friend on his body, and if he threw himself out of the window, how did he manage to have such a momentum that he was so many meters away from where he was supposed to have fallen? Also, how was he able to put the glass back if he was already on the ground? Emphasizing that if he fell backwards, how did the injuries to his jaw and the detachment of his teeth occur? Natalia never clarified this point and continued to maintain that he threw himself, and she witnessed it with her own eyes. According to the indications, it can be deduced that there was the participation of more than one aggressor, and that everything was planned in advance. Indications are mute witnesses that never lie, and this case may be darker than it seems. Tyron Jose Gonzalez Orama, known in the artistic world as Canserbero. Canserbero was born on March 11, 1988 in Caracas, Venezuela, the son of Jose Gonzalez Ollares and Letizia Coromoro Orama. At the age of 4, his parents moved to the city of Palo Negro in the state of Aragua, where he spent his childhood and adolescence in the company of his siblings. In 1997, unfortunately, his mother passed away, leaving him under the care of his father. Despite the absence of his mother, Canserbero enjoyed a normal childhood and was attracted to music from an early age. The radio was always on in his home, which allowed him to listen to groups such as Beatles, Black Sabbath, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, and Pink Floyd, thus awakening his taste for music and becoming his source of inspiration. At the age of 12, he began writing and rapping, adopting the nickname Canserbero in reference to the three-headed snake-tailed dog from Greek mythology, Cerberus, who guarded the gates of hell. During his adolescence, he joined a band called Códigos de Barrio and later released a virtual album titled Indigos. Later, he studied law and political science at the Universidad Bicentenaria de Aragua, but did not finish his degree due to his focus on music. In 2008, he released his mixtape Nuestra Doctrina No Es Un Dogma, and in 2010, his debut solo album, Vida, which earned him the award for Best Hip-Hop Artist at the Distortion Awards. Canserbero stood out for his defiant lyrics, criticizing power and the Venezuelan police, and performed in several countries. In 2013, he released a duet album with rapper Apache titled Apay Khan, and in 2014, he was preparing for another album with Carlos Molnar, which did not materialize due to the tragic event that to this day remains unclear. Despite the theories that have emerged, there is no one accused, and there is mention of the possible involvement of the high powers in his country, since Canserbero openly criticized these powers in his songs. His death remains a mystery, and so far no conclusive evidence has been found. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave me your opinion in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, like us, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next videos.